series of lessons started with a statement from the now deceased Brother Curtis Cates, who would say, God does not ask man questions for information, but rather for contemplation. So when you and I look at the questions in the Bible, while it's not directed toward us, is there something I can learn from that? Absolutely. So we're going to look at Joshua this evening. And I suspect Joshua grew up like any good Jewish boy. He would have been surrounded with men who worked in the temple and the tabernacle area at that point in time, tabernacle area, with priests and high priests. He would have been surrounded by men who farmed the crops. He would have been surrounded by men who were shepherds. He would have been surrounded by men who would be in the textile industry. And all of those things play a part generally in a boy's life as he's growing up, sort of deciding what he wants to do or what he doesn't want to do. It comes about that he chooses soldiering. That's what he does. He becomes a soldier. It's not that he became a soldier necessarily, but rather everyone of age was required to be a soldier in Israel. Even today, in the IDF, from age 18, males and females both go into that army in Israel. Interestingly enough, they run through either 2 or 4 year stint where they're in the active duty, but they also have to remain available for the army until they're 50. Just a side note for you there, if you ever wanted to know that. So, he decides to become a soldier, and really the first time we ever read about him is in Exodus chapter 17 and verse number 9. And there he's mentioned as the guy who's leading the charge against one of those ites. You know the ites? You know the guys who all are in Canaan, and we don't know the Perizzites or the Hivites or which ites we're talking about, but they're in there. He goes from there and he begins to move up the ranks in the army, as we would say. He shows himself to be a good leader. And as that good leader, Moses, who's in charge of all of Israel, begins to put him in different places. Eventually he works himself up to where he is the, what we would call the head of security for Moses. He's the guy who's in charge of protecting Moses and making sure all those things work the way God wants them to. He doesn't know yet. He doesn't understand yet. And perhaps at this point, Moses doesn't even understand. But what God is doing with Joshua's life is he's getting him prepared to take over the job that Moses is in now. When you finish up with the book of Deuteronomy, before the last chapter. Now, you study on this a little bit and come back and tell me how this is possible. I got an idea, but I ain't real sure. But before the last chapter, the author of it dies. You know how hard it is to write a chapter from the grave? I don't know. I haven't been to either one. But when Joshua starts, here's how it starts. Now, the death of Moses, the servant of God. Now, Israel, like a flock of sheep without a shepherd. Do they stay where they are? Are they just bogged down where they are? Do they have any hope of going forward? They don't have any hope unless one becomes their leader. And so that's what happens in verse number 1. It came to pass that the Lord spake to Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore rise, go over this Jordan, and tell the people to do everything I've told them to do with Moses. Notice this idea. Generally, when we read from the book of Joshua, especially verse 1 and verse 2, we sort of read those things matter-of-factly. And perhaps with God it was stated rather matter-of-factly, because God understands this life and physical death and that life after this life. But he just straight out said Moses is dead. And Israel, as a nation, is going to be dead in the water unless Joshua takes up the mantle. Now, understand this fact. Joshua never had to say yes. The Lord could have said, Joshua, I want you to be in charge. And he could say, not me, you better pick somebody else. God has never, from Genesis chapter 1 forward, as we've studied through some of those chapters this week, God has never forced anybody to do anything. He's offered reward for those who would be obedient. He's offered punishment for those who would be disobedient, but he's never said, Andy, you're going to have to do this. It's necessary and you can't get out of it. Oh no. See, the fact of the matter is I can leave and walk out these doors tonight and turn my back on the church and leave it forever. It doesn't force me to stay here. So it is Joshua who makes that decision to take up the job that should be given to him by God. And there are three things, or one phrase that's mentioned 3 times within chapter number 1 that should give us some encouragement and should give Joshua some encouragement. Look at verse number 6. I think if you can assign something, I think this would be the key phrase of this, first of this chapter, and then of the book. Here are the key phrases. Be strong and of good courage. Can you imagine what Joshua has seen throughout his growing up with Moses? Of people who would say, well, you just brought us out here to starve us to death. I wish I had something to drink. Well, I'm getting tired of eating these things that taste really good. I wish I had some meat. Do you ever read of a point in time where the nation of Israel is going through this wilderness journey with God and Moses, where they say, I'm so glad we got out of captivity. I'm so glad we are living underneath this rule of God. There's not a time. All we read about them is saying, man, I wish I had, or if I had this, or what about that? And so he said first to him, you're going to have to be strong, because these folks will wear you down. You live in a town, in a society like that, where you as Christians have to be strong because those who are on the outside of the blood of Christ will wear you down? Yeah, oh yeah. Did you know the largest religious body found in the United States is a church in Houston? Their auditorium seats 45 or 50,000. And you can get a ticket. Did you hear that? You can purchase your ticket to sit in that assembly. Did you hear that? What if we started selling seats here? Imagine that. By the way, those tickets go from $45 to $65. So that would be $80 to $130 for a couple to sit. Imagine if you had kids like Caleb. I don't know what you're going to do. At least some of them home, wouldn't you? You imagine what that price would be? If you had 4 children, that would be $260, and then $130 for you. That's $390 just to go to church. And the people on the outside of the church bought by the blood of Jesus to Christ think that's normal. Think that's how it's supposed to be. The world says anything. The world does anything. The world thinks you should say and do anything. And they think you're odd when you don't. And it tends to wear on us, doesn't it? People are social animals by God's nature. We want to be with folks. We want to be accepted by our group of peers. And when our peers change their minds on some things, we begin to look at ourselves and say, is that right? Am I right? Are they right? Does it matter? Be strong, Christian. Be strong. Because the world and the leader of that world will wear you down if he can. And he'll hope you trip up. Be strong. Notice this next phrase mentioned by God, or to God, from God to Joshua. Be strong and of good courage. You know why? Because it takes a little bit of a backbone and a little bit of courage to stand up for what is right. Not what is popular now, but what is right. There's going to come a point in time in Joshua's life where he should have checked some folks and he did not. And God says, you're going to pay for that. But should he? Yes. He didn't have the courage to do what was right, have that due diligence. You and I find ourselves from time to time lacking courage, and so we make either foolish decisions or impulsive decisions, and we suffer those consequences, don't we? Why? Courage, my friends. Courage. Courage. What it takes to serve God. Be strong and of good courage. Notice verse number 7. Only be thou strong and very courageous. That sounds very familiar, like verse 6, doesn't it? Look at verse number 9 one more time. Be strong and of good courage. You see that one 3 times? Right there within about 4 verses, God is imploring Joshua. You're going to have to stay strong. You're going to have to stay the course. You're going to have to be the light that's shining for me amongst these people. But our first question comes from verse number 9. Underneath the idea of be strong and of good courage, where he says, have I not commanded thee? Well, what's today? Monday? Y'all sure you're going to have me back 2 more days? And we figure out which one of these commands you want to go to. Has he not commanded the sinful world to be obedient to him? Through hearing what he has to say and believing those things, through repentance of sin, through confession of Jesus the Christ, and through baptism, being added to the church for which Jesus gave his life. Has he not commanded that? Could he not ask us, have I not commanded you? If you and I were to read the between the lines here in the question, have I not commanded you? You could also read this. And if I have, why aren't you doing it? Well, underneath the idea of salvation, perhaps they don't know. Church, I'm going to tell you something. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 6 through 9 is going to be a question that we, the church, have to answer for. You know, those that know not God or that obey not his voice. Those who will be sent to that eternal area that nobody wants to even think about. Those who will be lost from God's sight forever. Why? Because they didn't know. Why didn't they know? And if I think I can simply fill a pulpit here or home or wherever and assume that everybody's just going to come to me and find out, well, I got another thing coming. Let me tell you something. If they don't know, and when they don't know, the first group of people God should ask about why they don't know is the church. Look at Acts chapter 8 and verse number 4. It's the first time the church gets in enough problems that they're going to have some issues where people need to go and get out of the hot spots. Acts chapter 8 verse 4 will read this way. And they that were scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word. Right? Well, if you look back at Acts chapter 8 verses 1, 2, and 3, what you're going to find is all those apostles stayed in Jerusalem, and it was the members who left. Well, they may never do anything with it, but they do have the right to know. Have I not commanded thee? Let's take a tour around my neighborhood, if you will. This is my house. It sits here. It's regular people, regular normal people, you know, seemingly normal people live in that house. A couple of dogs, a few kids, a mom, a dad, which is seemingly insane for this time. The neighbors to my left, fantastic neighbors. Help you with anything. Nice people to talk to. But I tell you, they were a homosexual couple. Great guys. Just as wrong as they can be. They asked me when they first found out what I did for a living, they said, do you think this situation, this living situation that we're in, this marriage that we're in, do you think it's right? I said, no. That don't mean I can't help you. That don't mean I can't show the light that Jesus would have us show to other people, to them. Matter of fact, invited them to church. I did. One of them said to me, and I guess I'll never forget this statement, he said, you're the first person in 9 years to ever invite us to church. Now, they didn't come. They were, I guess, afraid of what people would say or how they'd be treated. I told them they could sit with us. But in 9 years before somebody even invited them to church. That's them. These guys live across the street from me right here are a set of grandparents. Good old guy. The grandfather over here owns the company that put the cages around our air conditioners up at the church building. We had somebody come by and steal $200 worth of copper. It eventually cost us $60,000 to replace all the air conditioning. I would give you $200. Just quit tearing up my air conditioning. Anywho, great guy, grandfather, works hard, raising 3 grandchildren. Why? Where are the parents? Well, one's in jail and one's strung out. Had just as hot springs. How about these guys over here? Interestingly, they have a lot of cameras around their facility. Just saying. I don't know what they're doing. A lot of people come by them and visit them. Apparently, somebody's sick in there because there's a lot of visitors. I'm trying not to think that. I have 2 children there, and both of them really have issues in anger management. And here's the reason why. There's a mother figure and 3 father figures in that house. Have I not commanded you that it's one woman and one man for one lifetime? Have I not commanded that? Did I not start that in Genesis chapter 2? Did I not remind you about that through the Old Testament? Did Jesus the Christ not remind you about that in Genesis or in Matthew chapter 19? Yep, why did you get it so wrong? Because we want to change it. Just because we want to change it. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't be deceived. Just because God commands something doesn't mean man will follow it. Man should follow it for the best life man can have and for the most productive life for God and the best afterlife man could have. He should follow it, but he doesn't. Man normally does what he wants to do. You understand that? Man does what he wants to do. Why are you here? Because this is where you want to be. Guess what? There are people who are not here. Why? Because they don't want to be. But wouldn't that be a command of God? Man does what he wants to do. Have I not commanded you? Well, have I not commanded you in the worship service? so far? Good. What do you play?
Trombone.
Good.
Clarinet.
Clarinet. Man, I wish you weren't playing until next year. I got a clarinet, I'll say. I got one who's graduating this year who plays clarinet. I play a lot of instruments. I like music. You know what I've never done? One, because I'm scared of my mama. And two, now that I know a lot better. I've never played an instrument in here. I play music driving up here. I play music driving into the parking lot. I have music running through my head through the day. I play music on my phone. I like music. I like instruments. But there are 9 New Testament verses that say, this is not the area for that. Have I not commanded you? Every New Testament verse that deals with singing in the New Testament deals with singing, sang, sung, or singing. Or if you let me go with Hebrews 13:15, you can read the phrase, fruit of your lips. What do you think that is? So why then do so many do anything other than just sing? Hasn't God commanded them? Yes. You can put them in the same group with any of the 3 neighbors. Or the friends and family who know what the Bible would say about salvation and know how to do that, would refuse. Has he not commanded? He absolutely has. So as Joshua begins his process of being the leader, we're going to make it over to Joshua chapter 7 here in just a moment. God gives him a command after going across the Jordan River at flood stage. He has to back that river all the way up to a city called Adam. And the water begins to, interestingly, stand up on heaps. Now, if you can heap up water, I'd like to see that. If you can do that before I leave, I'd like to see that. I don't know how that works. He crosses over the Jordan River. They take out 12 stones there that have never been touched by an iron chisel, never been cut. And these men carry it over. They make it an altar. They sacrifice to God. And God says, all right, boys, here's the plan, Joshua chapter 6. I want you to go to Jericho. And I want you to go to that city that is seemingly different from every other city, and it is. I had the opportunity last November to go into Israel and then into Rome. First day, we went through the Dead Sea and all those kinds of places. Day number 2, before we got to the Dead Sea, we made it to Jericho. We had to cross over into Jordan to go to Jericho. And if you look from that heap that was Jericho, the city, you can see all the way over there to the Jordan River. Just as clear as a bell. I can see it and I got bad eyes. Here's what it said. The city there in Jericho is different from most every other city, especially of the day. It's got a fence. It's got it's enclosed. It has walls around it. I think chain link fence when I think fence, so I need to go bigger in my mind than chain link fence. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to line up in wartime formation. And I want you to be just as silent as you can be. I want you to walk around that city and go home. For 6 days, that's what I want you to do. Don't say a word. Don't blow a thing. Walk around the city and go home. I can imagine on day number 1, if I am Jericonian? What would be the name of a person from Jericho? I don't know. If I was from the city of Jericho and I was the guy responsible for the protection of the wall and I saw an army walk around Jericho, I might look at them and go, well, that's weird. Day 2, I might call Andy over there and say, what's this? What's this? Bet you $5 they walk around this thing and then just walk over the hill. Then day 3, 4, 5, and 6, they watch this same process go on, and I can only imagine these guys are looking at them thinking, what in the world is wrong with these people? Until day number 7, where God says, now, today I want you to walk around this city 7 times, still being as quiet as you can. And when you get back to the start-finish line on number 7, I want the priests who are out front to grab these shofar, their big old goat horns that they've hollowed out. And I want you to blow these war trumpets, these war horns, as loud as you can. I want everybody to holler as loud as you can. And when those walls fall down flat, I want y'all to commence to killing folks. That's a Alabama word. Y'all know that word? I want y'all to get after killing folks. And I want you to stop when folks run out. I want you to kill women, infants, children, men. I want you to kill animals. I want you to destroy it all. The whole thing. Don't leave a bit of it. And so, day 7 comes, and they walk, and they walk, and they walk around that city wall. And the walls fall outward, not inward. They fall outward. Many times throughout history, we find that many people would fasten their back of the house to those protected walls. Y'all ever shove a tree over and another tree under it and kind of pump up on the backside? Y'all know what trees are? Okay. If you push a wall over a house, it doesn't lay down flat. You have walls that fall outward. And then the fighting begins. And there's not a sword left that hasn't avenged for God. It's not dripping with blood. And now we have a great victory. Except, rewind just a little bit. Chapter 7, there's this guy who's just a marcher. He's just a soldier. You don't find him anywhere else in the Bible except Joshua chapter 7, and he's just a soldier. Really, without Joshua chapter 7, he probably goes into history unknown, but still one who has been a servant of God. Except while all this fighting is going on, we find out in chapter 7, because of the loss of 36 lives, that Achan has taken something he shouldn't have. That's funny. They kind of rhyme. Achan has taken. Notice what he took. The King James Version would say a goodly Babylonian garment. Sometimes the way your clothes look sort of tell on you. For example, Caleb's been at work today. You know how I know that? He's got to work on his shirt. I not so much. I don't have work on my shirt. He takes a goodly Babylonian garment. By the way, a shirt he can't wear. It's going to be different from that Jewish garment. It's going to look different. It's going to appeal to him differently. He takes a shirt he can't wear. He takes a portion of silver that is minted for the Gentile world. What's he going to do? Take that down to the local Walmart and try to buy some tires for his truck with those silver pieces? Why? He can't spend it. Why? He's Jewish and he has Gentile money. He took a wedge of gold. which, by the way, is not the general case for most every soldier. So he has a shirt he can't wear, silver he can't spend, and gold he can't spend. Well, he really took a lot, didn't he? But he did take it. God's command, aside from march around the city, was also this: the spoils of the war belong to me. They belong to me. And so everything he took from God. Notice, if you will, about verse number 10. We'll start with verse number, let's not start with 10, let's start with 6. So after the 36 men lose their life at the Battle of Ai, which Israel should have won hands down, Joshua knows there's an issue, so he goes to God, and he says this, verse number 6. He rent his clothes, he tore his clothes, he fell on the earth, on his face before the ark of the Lord until the evening, he and the elders of Israel. And Joshua said, Alas, O Lord God, wherefore hast thou all brought up the people over Jordan to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites and to destroy us? Verse 10. The Lord said to Joshua, Get up. Get up. Wherefore liest thou thus upon thy face? Get up, Joshua. Did you take the accursed thing? No, I did not. Did somebody in Israel? Yes, they did. Is Israel being punished? Yes, they are. Joshua, do you remember chapter 1 where I told you to be strong and be of good courage? Yes, I do. You're going to need it right here. You're going to need it right here. Get up off of your face. Should Joshua have fallen down before that ark and have pleaded to God for Israel? Yeah. It's the right thing to do. He talks to God. He pleads the case. That God says, I'm going to need you to stop talking right now and start working. If you continue to read through chapter 7, the plan is this. We're going to line everybody up. We're going to start by tribes. And when the tribe that is guilty, or the person who's guilty in that tribe, when they pass by, we're going to stop that tribe. Everybody else can go, because they don't know. Then we're going to go by houses, or by family groups. One big family group versus another big family group. We'll go through all of those, and when that family group comes through, we'll stop them. And then the rest of that family group can go, and then we're going to go individually, house by house. And when that house rolls through, we're going to stop them. After doing that, Joshua walks up to this man named Achan and says, What have you done? Sounds very familiar to last night, doesn't it? What have you done? You've put us all in jeopardy. Achan would say, I've taken this shirt, I've taken this gold, I've taken this silver, and I hid it. I buried it in a hole underneath my tent. How many of you, along with me, have family members who know what the truth is and just refuse to do it? Or who have put on Christ in baptism and yet have turned and walked away from the church? Think of Achan and sold out everything he had that would be glorious from God in order to get stuff he can't use. And it might be we at times, with all great sincerity and with probably all the emotion God has given us, would go in prayer to God for them. Praying that they have time, or that they regain their sense enough to come back, understand what they're losing. I'm not sure that God at some point in time wouldn't tell me to get up and get off of my face. Go tell them. Those members of the church who were members here now who are wayward and just decide not to, you miss them? Check it out. Go tell them. Do you want them back? Check it out. Go tell them. Maybe, perhaps maybe it's time that we get up off of our faces, stop only praying intently for them, but working a plan to get them back. I would never say, stop praying for them. Don't do that. Continue to pray for them. But sometimes we put legwork with that. Sometimes we build relationships. Sometimes they don't feel like they fit in, or they don't feel like they understand enough, or they don't feel like however many ways. Reassure them. Reassure them that Jesus is the way of salvation and that there is no other way. Jesus himself would say in John 14 and verse 6, I am the way, the truth, the life, and no man cometh unto the Father but by me. Interestingly tonight, has he not commanded us? He absolutely has. Whether that be putting on Christ in baptism, where we've gone over a little bit earlier, or whether that be going out and getting those lost sheep. How many having 100 sheep would not leave those 99 and go after the one? Jesus would ask. Every one of them is important. If you haven't put on Christ in baptism, you're going to get an opportunity here in just a moment to change your eternal destiny simply by making the right choice. Simply by saying, yes, I surrender my life to God. I'll be baptized in the blood of Jesus the Christ. I'll be raised to walk in newness of life. I can be his child. You can do that in mere moments. Might be that while you're in this place, you're a pretty good guy, a pretty good girl. And then you walk through those doors and go out there. You know, if you attend every single worship service through the week and all the Bible studies, that amounts to 4 hours. One on Wednesday, 3 on Sunday, right? Still got 164 hours to account for. So while you may be doing it right here, you might be doing it wrong there. And he can see. He always sees. So why not come home? Why not do it right both places? Why not put away the double life and the I have to act like this here and I got to act like that there and just be you everywhere as a child of God? Why not? Why not do it now? While we're standing, while we're sitting.
What can